Noggin was my favorite television channel growing up. You guys probably already knew that at this point because I have made so many videos covering Noggin and Nick Jr. throughout my time on this channel. I don't know, there's just like something so fun talking about preschool shows. I think it's just fun to go back and watch them. There's always just something so cute and whimsical about them. I think I specifically like talking about Noggin so much because I watched it the most growing up and it's just like not a thing anymore. Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, and Nick Jr., they're still kind of around to some extent, not nearly what they used to be. I think the United States is one of the last countries to have Disney Channel. I'm pretty sure, do not quote me on that, because most children nowadays are watching streaming services or YouTube. I really don't think this is necessarily like a bad thing. It's just how time works. More convenient things come along and then that makes the less convenient things obsolete. Despite its really short lifespan, Noggin itself, in my opinion, has a pretty interesting history, and I thought it'd be interesting to kind of talk about the different eras that Noggin had during its time on the air. As usual, if you'd like to skip to a certain section of the video, timestamps are going to be in the description, and yeah, let's get into it. Noggin was launched in 1999 as a collaboration channel between Sesame Workshop and MTV Networks, with the goal to provide educational content for tweens and teenagers.
Today is the first day of Noggin!
Go Noggin! It's your birthday! Happy birthday!
And to celebrate, we're playing the first episode of every Noggin show, all day.
Yeah! First Blue's Clues, first Dog, first Sesame Street.
You get the point. Basically, any show you see today, it's a first.
First!
And thank you for being a part of Noggin's first audience ever.
Go you! Go Noggin! Go Noggin! Woo!
This was something that really surprised me when I first found this out because yeah, there really isn't a whole lot of educational content out there for middle school and high school aged kids. There's always been a plethora of content out there for babies and toddlers, as well as engaging ways to learn as an adult. But yeah, high schoolers just kind of don't have anything. At first I was kind of wondering why this would be, but honestly, 11-year-olds are all going to be so different from each other. When I was 11, I was still very much like a kid. Like I was watching Disney Channel, I was still like playing with dolls and stuff. But then I had classmates who had moved on and grown up from that stuff. They wanted to be on social media. They weren't playing with toys anymore. It's just like, it depends on the kid. So it's kind of hard to make something and be like, oh, this content is specifically for people between the ages of like 12 and 13. Like you can't do that. It's really hard to do that. What I mean by saying that it's hard to do that, I mean that it's hard to do it well in an engaging way. For the first 3 years, Noggin would have 3 main blocks: a preschool block in the morning, a teen block in the afternoon and evenings, and an adult block at night. In the beginning, Noggin had quite an interesting lineup of shows. Obviously, they didn't have any originals to start off with, but they did have the classic Electric Company from the 70s, Ghost Rider, 321 Contact, Crow, Nick News, Square One Television, and Doug. The preschool block would air reruns of various shows such as classic Sesame Street, Little Bear, Kipper, Maisie, and The Busy World of Richard Scarry, which Busy World of Richard Scarry is such a great, underrated show that no one seems to talk about, and I want to make an entire video just devoted to Richard Scarry like content because that was a huge part of my childhood and I feel like literally no one talks about it. As someone who didn't watch Noggin during this era, I was just simply too young at the time, I'm actually impressed with the strong branding this channel had right from the jump. One thing that I complained about in my Nick Jr. history video was that there really wasn't a strong brand for Nick Jr. as a whole until later on, but Noggin seemed to have had that pretty much down packed. For example, the mascot on Noggin at the time was a little greenish yellow guy named Fred. Fred was actually the star of Noggin's first ever original series called The Fred on Your Head Show, which was an educational variety show that would include Fred reading fan mail, interviewing historical figures, hosting game shows, and would feature clips from other Noggin programming at the time. The show would air from June 5th, 1999 to September 9th, 2001. Other original Noggin programming at the time included A Walk in Your Shoes, Spoink, Big Kids, and On the Team. Ooby would also be introduced to the preschool block in the year 2000. Ooby was such a weird show. It's just so silly. Like that episode where they go to the park and they come across like the feet people will forever be burned into my brain. In 2002, Noggin would end the retro block for adults and would devote 12 hours to preschool programming during the day and 12 hours to teen programming at night, with the teen block being renamed to The N. Noggin's revamped preschool block would include the premiere of Play With Me Sesame, which was a spin-off of Sesame Street. The revamp of the Noggin preschool block would actually include the introduction of a delightful little host called Feet Face, and he is absolutely adorable. I would protect this little guy with my life. The N block would include much of the same programming that they had before, but they would also premiere O'Grady, Girls vs. Boys, South of Nowhere, and at the time would also be the home of Degrassi, The Next Generation. According to an article by Kidscreen at the time, it supposedly took them months to come up with a name for the N, and to be honest, I don't believe them. I understand that they wanted to have different names for the different blocks, like that all makes perfect sense, but the N? You're telling me it took you months to come up with the N? As the years went on, it became more and more apparent that priorities would lie more on Noggin than the N. As far as I could tell throughout my research, the N really didn't evolve that much. Any changes that were made to the lineup at the time would have strictly been shows that were acquired rather than original content. However, 2002 to 2007, I would consider that to be like preschool Noggin's golden era. There were just so many classic shows and programming that were introduced at the time, and I feel like when people talk about nostalgic 2000s childhood TV shows, they're probably talking about stuff they saw on Noggin. Some successful original programming at the time would include Connie the Cow, Miffy, The Upside Down Show, Jack's Big Music Show, and Pinky Dinky Doo. I think out of all of them, Pinky Dinky Doo was probably my favorite. I've always kind of loved like the collage cutout art style most of the time. I don't know, I think there's only been one show that uses this kind of cutout style that I don't like, and I think if you've been on this channel for long enough, you know which show that is. I will say, however, as a kid, when Pinky Dinky's head would grow like super big, I always felt super unsettled by that. And I think it's just because I was a really just anxious child. Everything just freaked me out, including that. And of course, in the year 2003, our lives would be forever changed when Moose and Z became the mascots of Noggin. And when I say our lives, I mean mine.
Take a look at this. This is my name. My name is Moose A. Moose. It's a little long, so most people just call me Moose. Now point your peepers at this. This is Z's name. It's not as long as mine, but I think Z is a beautiful name.
If you saw my Nick Jr. video from a couple years ago, you would know that Moose and Z are just my favorite mascots of anything in general. Their friendship is just so cute, and their vibe is just so fun, and their music, oh my god, their music is so good. Genuinely, I think these two had some of the best songs for children just ever. And I will die on that hill.
Days are the sunniest, jokes are the funniest, rabbits are the bunniest, hives are the honeyest, elephants the tiniest, troubles they're the nunniest, everywhere I go. Well, I've made my list and I've checked it twice. With only one thing, it's rather concise. Listen closely, please lend me your ear. I only want a candy cane this year. I don't like candy corn. No, I don't like candy corn. I like lots of other things, but I don't like candy corn.
The N actually had some mascots of its own come along in the year 2004 with the Alpha Teens. However, as far as I can tell, they weren't that popular, but they did have their fans, but they just weren't popular enough, and they were discontinued in 2005, so just a year later. In 2007, the N and all its programming would merge with T-Nick. T-Nick? Is that what it is? But the N and T-Nick would merge together to create Teen Nick. I hate the name Teen Nick so much. I can tell what they're going for. It's like the N from the Nick, is also the same N from the teen. Whoever was naming these channels at the time had just no whimsy, no creativity. The N and T Nick, come on guys. Teen Nick would feature reruns of older Nickelodeon sitcoms and would later go on to produce some original teen drama series as well. The same year, Noggin would become a 24-hour preschool-only channel, and honestly, I think this is a pretty good call. I've always been against the idea of children's channels having adult blocks on them at night, because there's already so much adult content on cable. I know that the N wasn't really an adult block, but I think my point still stands here. I think the N or Teen Nick or whatever, that should have been like a 24-hour channel, and then Noggin, the preschool channel, should have been 24 hours. I don't know. That's my opinion. In 2009, Noggin and Nick Jr. would merge together and create a new revamped preschool network simply called Nick Jr.
Moose here. My fine feathered friend Z and I have some nifty news. In fact, we are delighted to say Noggin is now Nick Jr. Hooray! Take a bow, Z.
At the beginning, this new Nick Jr. wasn't too drastically different from Noggin. It basically just took the best of Noggin's preschool programming and the best of Nick Jr.'s programming and just like merged them together, and Moose and Z were still the mascots, so, you know, that's a good thing. I vividly remember the day when these two channels merged together. I was 8 years old, and I was at a family friend's house, and we all decided to sit down in front of the TV after a long day of playing outside. We sat down to watch Franklin, and the Nick Jr. logo was in the corner, which I thought was really weird. I didn't really care like that deeply about it. I was just like, huh, I guess Noggin is Nick Jr. now. Weird. And I moved on with my life. Noggin as a brand, however, would be revived in 2015 in the form of a streaming service. The Noggin app would feature both old and new Noggin and Nick Jr. shows at the time. The streaming app was actually moderately successful. It actually recently got shut down this summer of 2024. In my opinion, I think the app itself is a really good idea, but I think they were pushing like the Noggin nostalgia just a little bit too soon, because the app launched in 2015, so not even 10 years after the channel shut down. At that point, I feel like most people who had fond memories of Noggin growing up, they were probably like still in their like early to mid-teens, so they weren't quite at the age where they had kids to introduce it to, if that makes sense. I don't know, in my opinion, I feel like in order to introduce Noggin to the next generation, you have to at least like wait for the next generation to be born. But as always, I would love to hear your thoughts. Did you watch Noggin or The N growing up? If so, what was your favorite show on the channels? I'd love to have a discussion with you guys down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!